what is the component to lifting and to physical training that is neglected so much nowadays? Why is it neglected, and why shouldn't it be neglected? That component is explosive training, a seemingly lost art to the masses, to the general populace nowadays. If you're not an elite athlete, barely anybody is actually training for explosiveness anymore, for explosion. And explosion is just your ability to produce power really quickly, to accelerate, to activate those fast twitch muscle fibers, and we'll get into that in a second. But it's basically your reaction system. And it comes down to reaction versus receiving something. Like, you are reacting to something versus receiving it. And we'll get into that in a second. But why is it neglected? So, back in the day, like, people had a little more physical jobs and they didn't lift as much. Then Arnold and everybody else involved in like the golden era of bodybuilding that I'm sure most of you have heard of or seen pictures of, kind of popularized bodybuilding as a sport. And then the big four, Jeff Seid, David Lay, John Skywalker, and Ziz came along and took that and applied it to a lifestyle that looked very attractive to the youth. So that was all about using the principles of bodybuilding to create an aesthetic physique and enhance your life greatly through that. And that was basically the foundation, the business model that built what you see on social media today, the whole fitness industry, empire shenanigans. That is what we're dealing with now, and that's how it was birthed, basically. But these principles passed down from these four godfathers of the fitness industry basically preached a very high time under tension, high volume kind of bodybuilder training, a lot of isolation movements to get pump blood into the muscles, nice, slow, and controlled movements for sets of 8 to 20 sometimes. Very muscular endurance focused, and that basically activates your slow twitch muscle fibers, or your muscle fibers that are involved with muscular endurance going long periods of time. And it neglects your fast twitch muscle fibers, which are what are responsible for reacting quickly, like producing force really quickly with your body, like exploding through a movement and building speed, jumping far. And a lot of this overlaps with powerlifting too. And you can always think about lifting and fitness as like a pie chart, where you're like trying to fill in as many gaps as possible with your training. Or like it's really a Venn diagram, seeing what overlaps where. And unfortunately, not a lot of the other pillars of physical performance overlap with this high volume, high time under tension, low weight training style that is popularized by many bodybuilders and many early fitness influencers. You know, you want to hypertrophy the muscle, you really want to feel the squeeze, the time under tension and stuff. And so fast twitch muscle fibers are something that need maintenance, otherwise they will wither away, especially when you're doing a lot of slow twitch muscle fiber training. A lot of your musculature will shift over to slow twitch function, and that is really important. And that's just talking about the bodybuilding / popular side of the fitness community. This is even more important for your average Joe, your average couch potato. For them, explosive training, I would argue, is way more important than the, slow twitch, hypertrophy muscle training. And here's why. So I just told you the difference between fast twitch and slow twitch muscle fibers, and why it's important to train fast twitch relatively frequently, because if it's neglected, it will go away, and it's the hardest part of fitness to really get back. Your fast twitch muscle fibers, once they're gone, it takes quite a bit to get it back. And that's also why it's very important to start kids into sports at a young age, especially track. I think all kids should do track as long as they can throughout high school, maybe even college. Doing sprints and jumps and stuff to build those fast twitch muscle fibers so that they're comfortable with that sort of training as they go into adulthood. Because hardly anybody after the age of 30 even still trains explosiveness. Even some college level athletes stop training for explosiveness after they're done with college, and that's a flawed mentality because it's a really important thing to keep. It's really important for longevity because it comes down to your ability to react versus to receive. And what does that look like? So if you're a quarterback and the pocket collapses or you're getting rushed by a D end, you can either receive that D end's tackle and just get brutalized by that D end, or you can react. You can get up, you can, dodge them. You can get your scramble on and react. And sometimes that reaction is just staying on your feet for 3 more seconds, keeping the play going. Sometimes it's getting hit by that D end in an athletic position versus like stiff and you get snapped like a twig. Or maybe that reaction is escaping the pocket and making a first down and sliding to a down. But anyway, that is a reaction versus receiving the D end's tackle. Like if you don't have that fast twitch reaction, that get up and go, you're gonna receive the opposition versus react to it. What does this look like though for the average Joe? This looks like slipping on ice and receiving the ground and receiving gravity versus reacting. You slip a little bit, but you're, gain your stance. You got that fast twitch reaction, you know what I mean? Or it's when somebody throws a football at you and you're not expecting it at like a get-together, a kickback or something. It's the difference between getting hit in the head by the football and looking like an absolute dunce, or putting them up and catching it last second, like, ooh, see that, still got it. That is what I mean by reacting versus receiving. Like, instead of receiving that football on your head, you're reacting and catching it. Instead of receiving the ground when you're falling, bam, athletic stance, recovering your footing. It really is a survival of the fittest mechanism. You want that fast twitch, and especially as you get older. And fast twitch training requires more of your mental focus, more motor neuron recruitment. So I believe it can even age against things like dementia because your body is requiring itself to stay in shape. And think about it. Think about this too. By the way, that's not scientifically proven. That's just a theory I'm building upon right now over at Temple Forming Labs. But anyway, here's a further point. Like if you don't believe me about all what I've said so far, just think about this practically. So the more explosive you are, and explosion is one of the key components of athleticism, the more explosive you are, the more likely you are able to compete in physical domains as you age. And the longer you compete in physical domains, the more comfortable you are with moving athletically and explosively and keeping that youthful, spry level of conditioning. So if I'm a 50-year-old dude and I'm still running like 40-yard dashes, I'm going to be more comfortable with sticking with the baseball league, with the young guys who are in shape and, competing and trying to keep up with them. I'm going to be more physically competent because I have more experience and more athleticism in the particular domains that everybody else my age and younger is doing to stay in shape. When you have explosiveness and the explosive conditioning component of physical training, you are going to be able to stick with a more physical lifestyle longer. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Because you have a higher level of physical competency. You have a higher degree of mastery over your body when you train explosiveness. Explosiveness is basically the highest form of human expression. Grandparents, you want to keep up, you want to get in shape to keep up with your kids. That's like the thing you hear the most. Like, oh, I just want to be able to, I'm taking care of my body, I'm hitting the gym to keep up with my grandkids and stuff. Your grandkids are not going to want to sit in like incline 45-degree machine press or chest fly or, do the hip abductor. You're not going to need that to keep up with them. Your kids are going to have some get up and go. You're going to need to speed up, slow down, and get going again. That's what keeping up with your kids actually, entails. Tag is not about, the seated ab machine, the crunches. That helps. And it's really important to have a competent muscular foundation. Your kids are going to be playing tag or like trying to evade you or hide and seek or something. You're going to need to be nimble and create, a reaction and, move from a place of standing still in quick time and then be able to do it again without, hurting yourself or running out of breath. So it's about that high intensity interval training, explosiveness, and then a brief 30 seconds tops rest time, and then doing it again, like being able to produce your top speed or top force in rapid succession. So over a long duration, you aren't lowering the amount of force output with your body. You are still able to, chase after your kids and stuff, or, throw the football, play ball games, play basketball, whatever it is, playing outside with your children. If, kids even play anymore. Maybe they're too busy on Roblox. Grandparents, if your kids are on Roblox, maybe forget what I said and pick up the controller and get to work. So in addition to explosive training being higher competency, so if you can train like a track athlete, you don't even need to worry about everyday things anymore, like bending over, picking something up, walking up and down the stairs, walking outside, shoveling the snow, because you are already more physically competent. Something like that is way less likely to injure you when you're already high competency physically. It's better for longevity. You can keep up with your children and grandchildren over time. But it's also good for bone density. It burns comparable amounts of calories to long distance steady state cardio. So you will burn similar calories to if you'd been walking or jogging for however amount of time as like sprinting, like 40 meters or 100 meters or something. You'll burn the similar amount of calories, but in way less time. And you are, again, doing that high-intensity interval training, which is a lot more practical in the real world. While you probably don't get the same mitochondrial benefits as long-distance steady-state cardio, and that has its place too. I do recommend both, maybe one time a week each. That long, steady-state cardio that works your slow-twitch muscle fibers, also very important, but you can build that later in life, and that is also very easy to maintain. Fast twitch is not and requires a lot more intentionality. We are kind of meant to be long distance steady state. We're endurance creatures basically. What's hard to maintain is that explosiveness, but oh golly, it is so important. So if you're trying to lose weight, explosiveness is already more practical than long endurance type of training or running or forms of burning off calories, burning the fat, because it is really good for your metabolism and it just takes less time. You have more time in your day when you train like the explosiveness, high interval training, like doing sprints, doing stairs, doing hills or such. And you'll have more energy throughout the rest of your day, and this high intensity interval training spikes cortisol less than, the long endurance training. Running all day spikes way more cortisol, stresses your body out more than doing like some sprints on the track, sprinting up the stairs, sprinting up a hill, doing some jumps, doing some plyometrics. And that makes it more practical for, the average working person, because then they won't be exhausted dealing with their family and their jobs. So now that I told you the how, why, what, where, backstory, general gist of why it's so important, I'm going to make it practical and I'm going to make it attainable for all of you. Because, like I said, explosiveness is the highest form of physical expression. And if you're not a very expressive person, this is going to be a much harder thing for you to be comfortable doing. Like, good luck getting your dad or Uncle Steve off the couch and getting them to the, track with you to do some 100-meter sprints. That's not like... A lot of adults just aren't comfortable being out in public doing sprints and stuff. Like, I just know one of the most anxiety-racking things for your parents or like the unks in your life is to be at a track and somebody like, look at Unk warming up, don't pull a hamstring, Unk. But I'm here to tell you, you can build up to that, to where you're whooping these kids in the 100 meters and you are, top dog as an Unk. Still, you still got that virility. But it's going to take a little bit of building up to. And that's the most important thing with explosive training, is because in the same way with muscle training, with hypertrophy training, you don't jump straight to a 300-pound bench, you don't jump straight to a 400-pound squat, but you build up over time. You hypertrophy the muscles. With sprinting and explosiveness and producing that force and reaction, you start off small, you start really slow distance. All of your training is more warming up and getting the body ready than actually doing the explosive movement. That's important. And then, stretching afterwards and getting proper recovery. But you start small. Nobody should really jump straight into a 100-meter, Olympic form, Olympic progression, all-out sprint. You want to start with maybe like 20 yards, maybe 10 yards. Maybe you don't even start with sprinting. Maybe you start with jumping. Maybe you start with small boxes, build the box height you're jumping up, and then you go to like full-on broad and vertical jumps, and then you start the sprinting progression. That's the beautiful thing about athletics, is there's so many different ways to attack this beast. But the best way to go about it is to start them young. All children should be doing track, and all high school level kids should be doing track. They should probably be doing something that gets the heart rate up, builds some endurance, and something that builds explosiveness and gets them comfortable with the habit of training explosively. That would be, get me in a leadership position in the United States and I'll freaking get. The next step is to lift explosively. And the nice thing about this is you can still build a good physique, you can still have your muscle, you can be lean, and you can lift actually heavy while also lifting explosively. You can have overlap in those four things. You might not be like this big bulbous like mass monster walking around, but you'll have muscle, you can be lean, and you can produce a lot of force and be strong, not being all show and no go, while also building that explosiveness, and that is by lifting explosively. So what does that look like? It looks like a controlled eccentric. So I squatted today, I'm still wearing my squat shorts, but it's basically controlled on the way down and then exploding through the concentric. So what you want to do is you want to probably stick within like a 5-rep range. If you want to bias your muscle size, maybe go up to 6 reps. If you want to bias explosiveness more or strength more like we've been talking about, maybe 4 reps. But 5 is generally a nice sweet spot for all levels of weightlifting. And what it looks like is picking the heaviest weight you can move while your movement with good form looks basically like this. Slow on the way down and exploding up, like a very fast concentric. If it's benching, that looks like, slow on the way down and firing up. So for fighters, producing that force to really strike like that is a close grip bench, controlled on the way down. Like I said, you don't want to get lost in the eccentric and make this a slow twitch muscle fiber workout, but it's basically just control on the way down and firing back up, switching between that, letting the weight come to you part of the movement and then pushing it back, like reacting to that force. That is what explosiveness is all about. It's the switching right there and exploding. So you basically want to take this, keeping good form, heavy weight that you can explode with. That's important, is that it's heavy, but not too heavy that you're grinding your gears. So like deadlifts that are like 600 pounds, if you are like shaking and convulsing on the way up and it's like a 10-second rep, there is nothing explosive about that at all. It's strong, it's impressive as heck, but it's not explosive. It would be better for you to like drop the weight down to maybe 365 and just hoist it up as quickly as possible. That is strength training, but making it for explosiveness. So you want to take the heaviest possible weight you can explode up with and do it for like 1 to 5 reps, and do that for however many sets. I would generally recommend, 6 to 8 sets a week, 6 to 9 sets a week. For each muscle group you're training explosively while lifting, keeping it 1 to 5 reps each set. And the important thing is, this is the crucial part of fast twitch muscle fiber training, is that you are not going backwards in your speed. You are building speed or maintaining relative speed while building extra weight on the bar. But you don't want to make your last set way slower than the first one. You want to maintain an intensity that you can keep that same explosive speed throughout. So keep that in mind when you're picking a weight. Will I be able to still produce that force at the end of on my last set versus first set? First and last set should be around the same speed or faster. Or the last set should have more weight but the same speed than the first one, because it's all about that explosion. You don't want to get fatigued too much. You don't want your muscles to get fatigued, I should say, by your explosive training. Your lungs, that's okay. But you want when you're explosive training, you want your lungs to give out before the body. That's the most important part. Because when your body gives out, you're automatically switching into that slow twitch muscle fiber state. And lastly, for lifting, you do want to add in a lot of unilateral work. One arm explosion, doing your RDLs, one leg, like so. You want the balance component as well. Because like I said, this is important for a lot of older folks because it does train balance. And unilateral is going to build even more explosiveness while working on balance. So definitely add those singular limb or one-sided movements into your explosive routine as well. That'll be one-arm shoulder presses, one-arm bench presses, like maybe with dumbbells, staggered stance squat, stagger stance rows, RDLs, all of the like. Stagger stance jumping. You get the point. So training explosively at home. Look at this. Nice tall set of stairs. Nice clear strip of carpet right here. That is plenty of room to train explosiveness without having to leave the comfort of my own home and worrying about what people think of me yet. You want to build up to that comfortability level, but I understand a lot of people that see this video are going to see it and be like, oh, this is just not practical for me. I know me. I'm not going to get to the track and, start busting out some 100-meter sprints. And I should also state that 100 meters is about the longest you can run while only being fast twitch muscle fiber. After 100 meters, it becomes, really fast, slow twitch muscle fibers. But pure explosive fast twitch muscle fiber, the longest distance is generally 100 meters. That's where you get to top speed. That's how you maintain that explosiveness the whole time. It's 100 meters. That's why it's such an awesome Olympic race to watch. So that being said, you don't need a ton of space to train explosiveness at all. And like I just said, maybe sometimes you just need weights or even your body weight to perform explosive movements. But you saw that carpet space. I can perform broad jumps out there. I can perform single leg bounds. And with the stairs, I can sprint up the stairs. And it's important, stride length's important to consider when you're sprinting up the stairs. You want a stride length that isn't like you're doing little bitty Mr. Krabs strides, and you want them to be not so long that it's basically a complete bound and you have to recover a little bit from the bound to make it up the next stairs. You want to be like boom, 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 like, you kind of want to stride up the stairs as quickly as possible. That's one way to do explosive, like sprinting style training or hill style training. That's another thing too. Instead of going to a track, you can find a hill, and a hill will work on ankle mobility, building that reaction part of physical fitness. And basically, remember to keep this sub 100 meters. And when you add elevation into the mix, going up hills, you might even want to go less distance up the hill, or maybe walk a part of the hill and then sprint it. Because very quickly, with the rise in elevation, you are going to switch to that slow twitch muscle fiber state after your body gets exhausted because you've added elevation to the mix. So you probably want to keep hills sub 100 meters because as you get gassed, instead of you running up the hill like looking like that, it's going to start to look like towards the end. You know what I mean? If you don't know what I mean, you'll find out pretty quickly once you do hills. You want to be able to dart up the hill, walk back down, maybe take a couple second breather at the bottom, and then dart back up the same amount of time. So stairs and hills are nice because you can get that elevation training. Stairs, you can also train vertical and broad explosive jump plyometric training. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm thinking that should be a good angle. So for me, a hill style sprint up the stairs is gonna look like 3 steps each stride. So that will look a little something like this. Exploding through it with each step. Now, I can do multiple forms of plyometric explosive training. So I can go like this, 1 step, build up to 2 step. I can do 3 steps, 4 steps. I might rip my shirt doing this, but I can even do 5 steps. So you have nice increments to build explosiveness off of by just upping the step. Be careful, but the nice thing about doing it in a stairway is if I land in an awkward angle and I'm coming back, I can grab the sides and just step back like that. It's so easy, super low risk to recover from. Remember, the most important thing about explosive training is getting warmed up. Warming up the body properly, running through all your dynamic warm-ups. I can run you through a couple of those. I can post a link to a video in the captions below of all the different warm-ups you can do for getting ready for explosive training. But yeah, there's plenty of things that you can do with a staircase to train explosively. You can also get some weight in hand. I'll grab 8 pounds and just pick a certain amount of stairs that you can safely do for a certain amount of sets. Like, let's say I want to do 3 sets all the way to the top, and my increments are 4 steps. I just have these at my side, and go 1, 2, 3. Kind of like that, with the resistance. So I'm exploding up the stairs with this resistance in my hand. I get good at that. I lose the resistance. Now I can explode up 5 when I have no weight in my hand. Just like that. So there's a lot of ways to train explosiveness. I could also do broad jumps and bounds right across here. You know, you don't need boxes when you have stairs at your home, especially if they're sturdy stairs. I understand if you're a little overweight and you have creaky wooden steps, you don't want to just bust right through the floorboards. Just build up, and you already have a lot of resistance already, so maybe just work on the sprinting up the stairs, smaller stair increments, and then once you lose the weight, the stairs can handle a little more of you, and you can handle a little more of the stairs. It's freaking awesome, the explosive training, and it's such a shame that it's so lost on many people, and that's because it's very expressive. It's not like just spamming one movement and then looking at the pump you got from it in the mirror. The successful feeling of accomplishment you get from explosive training, it kind of comes like, and it's something you feel. It's not something you can see super viscerally. But I'm telling you guys, this is one of the most important ways to train. So yeah, we got fast, heavy, and good form lifts that you're not diminishing your speed for each rep. You got plyometrics like box jumps, broad jumps, vertical jumps. You got hill training and stair training, and then you got your sprints, anywhere from 10 meters to 100 meters. Those are the sprints you want to be working on. Or for the, the American fellas, 10 yards to 100 yards. So rather than leaving you guys high and dry, I'm going to give you a nice demonstration of a dynamic warm-up you can go through to get you ready for some explosive training every single week that I can do right here in my basement. You don't even have to leave the house, and this serves as good cardio. It gets your heart rate up. Every warm-up should get your heart rate a little up, should get your body warm and the muscles and joints a little loose, and especially ready for the relative workout. So a lot of these you will see kind of look like movements that are used, they're angles the body is in a sprinting movement. And that's because we are getting it ready to sprint, so it only makes sense. So with this space you can see that I have in my basement of, let's say 20 to 30 feet I have of space in this basement. Just do You can do one down and back of each of these. So you can do butt kicks, opening up the knee and warming up the hamstring. You can do knee kicks. You can do leg kicks. This is stretching the glutes and hamstrings. Also getting the abs activated a little bit. A skips, which is kind of like a high knee, but where you strike the ground to carry yourself forward. And then B skips, which is where you bring your knee up as if it were a high knee, and then extending it out and striking the ground, using your hamstrings and glutes to propel yourself forward. That's a very common track warm-up. Hip openers and hip closers, especially when you're jumping, this is pretty good. It warms up your hips and your adductors for producing rotational force in the sprinting movements. And when you're training agility, agility is something we didn't even get into. That's like, you know, building speed after changing direction. So wide receivers, that's like when they cut and then explode out on a route. We don't have enough time. I'll get into agility, but agility is also part of explosive training. Oh my goodness, we'll get to that in another video. But a warm-up that targets your glutes, calves, and hamstrings, but also gets the joints ready for the force you're putting on it in each stride is something like bounds, where you keep your legs stiff and just kind of explode forward like so. I'll come back. Just kind of coming down on this part of your foot and exploding forward. Because your joints need to get a little good at taking some force, because obviously sprinting is like hitting the ground hard and exploding forward. And if you want to get your trunk ready for explosive training, some lunge and twists are pretty good. Just coming down as if you were lunging with the weights and twisting your torso. But anyway, this video has ran pretty long. I don't know how long, probably too long, but thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helped. Really hope this got to the masses, because the masses need to see it. And yeah, love you guys. God bless y'all. Peace out, and I will see y'all next time.